Welcome back to another episode of the Even Your Dynasty show. On today's episode, as we discussed previously, we're going to go over Jordan Hicks' start, why he looks like the steal of free agency, and kind of the important question, at least for me and maybe a lot of other Giants fans, is it going to be sustainable? Is this something that he can continue to do over the course of the rest of the season, the rest of this contract, etc.? And we're going to look at a lot of the things he's doing really well. And I think the answer to me is yes, it could be sustainable. And we're going to kind of go into why. So this is going to be a little bit of a different style video. If you do like this kind of content, you guys are going to have to tell me and we'll put out more of this. If you're, I just hit 400 subscribers. I appreciate all the support you guys are giving me on this. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of learning experience doing this stuff. Totally stepped outside my comfort zone to do these. So it's a lot of fun. And if you're, if you're returning to the channel, welcome back. If you're new, welcome. Appreciate you guys joining in on this one. So to start off, we're going to talk about where Jordan Hicks, we're going to just look at the basic kind of the standard numbers. So far through 4 starts, he's 2-0 with a 1.57 ERA. He's thrown 23 innings. He has 18 strikeouts, 6 walks, and a 0.91 whip, which that is elite. Some things that you notice early on with Jordan Hicks and how he's been able to do this, and the things that I don't think any of us expected him out of him coming in. I know I didn't with his track record. Is he has been remarkably efficient since he started the season. He's averaging 14.65 pitches per inning, which, the goal is usually 15. So if he's coming in under 15, that's very good. Now, where it gets kind of interesting is how he's doing that, because if you look at his career strike percentage, he's thrown strikes at a 60.2% rate. He's at 60.9 in 2024. So a slight uptick, but it's not enough to where you would generally look at him and go, how is this guy so much more efficient now than he was? And, you watch the Marlins game, maybe teams are going to try and see more pitches out of him. I think teams are swinging earlier in counts to try and, attack a guy with a 98-mile-an-hour sinker. I mean, it's cruising at like 96, but we'll see, because you look at it and you see the whiff percentage and his K percentage are way down. His strikeout percentage is 20.7% this season, and he's striking out 7.04 per 9. His career, he's at a 9.23 per 9. So he's down almost 2 strikeouts per 9. The strikeout percentage is, his career average is 24.2, and he's down at 20.7. So, he's, a lot of these numbers are down from what it normally is at. His chase percentage is only 25.7%. That's good for 34th percentile. The whiff percentage is at 21%. That's the 25th percentile. His K percentage, he's in the 40th percentile. There's a lot of things that you would look at and you'd think, okay, and this guy is going to, like, he's pitching way over his head. But then you look at kind of the things that he's doing really well, and that's he's still getting ground balls at an elite rate. He's in the 90th percentile on that at 58.1%. A guy like Logan Webb is number 1 in baseball. He has been for years. He's kind of the poster child for getting the ball on the ground. But then you look at some of the other things. His fly ball rate's up. He's allowing fly balls on batted balls. His fly ball percentage is at 31.1%. His career, it's 21.5. So he's actually giving up more fly balls, which, pitching in 18 or in Oracle Park, that's not a bad thing necessarily. But the discrepancies that I'm seeing are mainly his home run to fly ball rate is almost cut in half. It's at 5.3%. His career is 9.4. He's allowing a lot of medium contact instead of hard or soft contact. His hard contact rate's down by about 4%. His soft contact rate's down quite a bit, but his medium is up a bit. So he's getting a lot of balls on the ground, and he's getting a lot of balls, medium contact fly balls, essentially, which pitching in, Oracle Park behind this defense, makes a lot of sense. That's a good way to have a lot of success. I mean, you have possibly 3 Gold Glove candidates in the infield at second, short, and third. And I would love to say a Gold Glove caliber catcher, but he's been throwing to Tom Murphy almost every start, if not every start at this point. It seems like he's kind of the personal catcher, which makes no sense to me because I think with a guy with Hicks stuff, you'd rather get a guy like Bailey behind the plate, but they've been rolling with Murphy. So you take kind of these numbers, and what it says to me is he's dialing back his stuff. And we're going to go into the pitch data, the pitch mix, and everything there, but he's dialing back his stuff. He's throwing, and guys are trying to attack him earlier in counts. So, yes, the league is probably going to adjust to him at some point, similar to how the Marlins attacked him in the fourth inning, and try and see more pitches out of him and see if he can execute more 3-2 counts. To try and draw more walks, because his walk rate is way down right now. It's at 6.9%. His walks per 9 are at 2.35, which is less. It's almost, it's exactly half of his career average. His career average is 4.7 walks per 9. So he's getting, I think, a lot more swings earlier in counts, and he's getting less swing and misses, which is good because when you throw a 96-mile-an-hour sinker and all your stuff has downward bite, it makes sense. You want guys swinging. You want to be efficient. You want these quick outs where guys pounded 1-0 or 0-1 sinker down into the ground, and you just let Chapman clean it up, or Ahmed or Estrada or whoever. You want these things. So now I do think there's going to be a little bit of regression. We can't expect him to throw to a 1.5 ERA all season. He's going to, especially with ground ball pitchers, we see it with Logan Webb all the time. Sometimes you just have bad luck and they find holes, So every now and then you're going to get one's going to get barreled up. You walk a few guys. I think teams are going to get a little more patient with him. Few of these guys are going to get on base, and you're not going to have a home run to fly ball rate of 5% your whole season, more than likely. That will regress to the mean, so to speak, and probably get back closer to his career average, which is fine because the nice thing with Jordan Hicks is he's elite at keeping the ball in the yard just in general. If you look at his home runs per 9, his career, it's 0.47. Right now it's at 0.39 on this season, but his career, he's been very elite at that. Now his stuff, he's dialing back the velocity and everything, so maybe that goes up a little bit, but that's something to just kind of keep an eye on. I do think some of these things aren't sustainable to the level he's doing it, but they are sustainable overall, like long term. Like I think him being really efficient and really good at a lot of these things is. And now we're going to look at the pitch data, and this is kind of why I think he's going to be able to keep up what he's doing. So in 2023, his main pitch mix, he threw 3 pitches. He had a sinker that he threw 64% of the time. Average velocity was 100 miles per hour. It had 15.8 inches of horizontal movement. The sinker for him runs to the third base side, arm side, 19 inches of downward movement. He threw a sweeper 19% of the time, 87 mile per hour average velocity, 12.4 inches of horizontal movement to the first base side, glove side, 36.2 inches downward movement. And then he had his four-seam fastball 11% of the time. He had a split finger that he's mentioned that he's started to develop, and how he didn't really use it much for the first couple of years. He kind of toyed with it, and this is going to be the big change in his pitch mix that we're going to see. But he threw it only 1% of the time in 2023. Average velocity 91 miles per hour, 10.1 inches of horizontal movement to the arm side, 33.7 inches downward movement. So now we're going to compare these to his 2024 pitch mix, the data that he's getting out of these. Sinkers, he's throwing 53% of the time, 96 mile per hour average velocity. Now it has 17 inches of horizontal movement, 22.9 inches of downward movement. So it's an increase of 1.2 inches of horizontal and an increase of almost 4 inches of downward movement in the sinker. His sweeper, he's throwing it a little more, 25% of the time, average velocity 82 miles per hour, horizontal 0.1 inch, downward 36.8. So the horizontal is actually down by 0.3 inches. It's pretty close. And the downward, it's a slight, about a half a inch more downward bite. So that not a big change, just down in velocity a little bit. And now the splitter, this is the big one. He's throwing it now 15% of the time, which he was only throwing at 1% previously. Average velocity 85 miles per hour. So good, kind of change up off of the sinker. Horizontal movement 7.6 inches. So it's actually less horizontal movement by about 2.5 inches, but it's downward bite 39.5 inch downward movement, up from 33.7. He's increased the downward movement on that pitch by 6 inches nearly. And then his four seamer, he's throwing 7% of the time, average velocity at 97. So essentially, and I'm going to put the heat maps of these pitches up on the screen here to show you guys kind of where he's throwing them. You have the sinker, sweeper, and splitter that he's throwing down in the zone. And then the four seamer, he's essentially busting up and in, or busting up in the zone, and he's throwing it primarily to left-handed hitters. That's kind of a pitch to attack the lefties with, which makes sense, because when you have a sinker that has 17 inches of run back into the zone, what better to throw off that to a lefty than, if they're kind of leaning on that pitch thinking it's going to come back, then throw almost 100 miles an hour on their hands up and in. So he's throwing the four seam up in the zone. That's the one pitch he kind of attacks up. And, with all the downward movement he has, he can make those mistakes up in the zone and get away with them. And then when he's not making mistakes up in the zone, he's basically unhittable, because you're not going to touch this kind of stuff down in the zone. And the data kind of supports that. You look at how teams are hitting against his fastball and his splitter right now. And if we pull up the pitch mix, batting average against his four seam, teams are hitting 250, or hitters are hitting 250. His sinker, players are hitting 235. Against his sweeper, players are hitting 071, and against his split finger, teams are hitting 091. Essentially, they're attacking him early in a count, trying to get the sinker. They're trying to get something they know they can put a bat on, because these hitters know they are not touching his split and his sweeper, that are kind of diving opposite directions with hard downward movement. And that's kind of what we're seeing out of his stuff. And, him dialed back is still 96 to 98 with a sinker, which is frankly disgusting, especially for a guy that is giving you 5 or 6 innings because of his efficiency. Now, as far as long-term, viability of all this, we're going to have to wait and see for sure how does his arm react as the season goes.
True affection for Joey.
I do think it would kind of behoove the Giants to
got him. Good inning.
Have hold him to like a 90 pitch count on the entire season. I don't want to see, this is a guy that I'd be terrified of his arm just like falling off practically and having a bunch of injuries. I don't wish that upon anybody, but that's my concern with a guy that throws like he does. But he does seem like he's cruising, and he can just cruise at a higher velocity, and he's not giving max effort. And sometimes, he reaches back and you'll see him hit 100 with a pitch, but he's not, he's not doing that frequently. And he knows, like watching the game against Miami the other day, I mean, there was a sequence where he just flat out put a 98 mile an hour fastball or sinker on the black, on the outside corner, and it just froze the righty. And it's like, when you can throw pitches like that, nobody's touching you. Like, and I'm going to put some of these pitch overlays up. I have a couple of them that I saved that it's kind of ridiculous. It's a sinker and a sweeper, and you have two pitches that dive similar distances, opposite directions. And, the sinker, it almost looks like a lefty power slider. You have these pitches that dive opposite directions that, when you throw it on the outside, these guys, when you throw 98, these guys have such little time to make a swing decision and figure out if they're going to swing at it or not. And, even with the low chase rates, I mean, you just keep letting, you sacrifice a little velocity to get a little more contact, but you have all this extra movement and you're just going to get a bunch of not hard contact pounded in the ground to Nick Ahmed for an easy routine grounder, or to, they're hitting it up in the air and you're in the perfect park to let your fly ball rates get a little higher. You're pitching in Oracle where it's just as pitcher friendly as it gets. So I think Jordan Hicks is in the perfect place for him. It was kind of the perfect player for the Giants to get on a steal of a contract, potentially. I mean, it looks that way so far. And he's in the perfect place for him where he's got all these great defensive players in the infield and a big, spacious outfield for him to, do what he does best, and that's keep the ball in the yard. So you guys have to let me know what you think of this. If you want more stuff like this, tell me your guys' thoughts on him. I mean, I know I am genuinely shocked at how good he has been. I never would have expected anything like this out of him. I was skeptical. When I'm looking at the contract they gave him, going, well, that's kind of the going rate for a back end bullpen guy. See Taylor Rogers' contract. It's pretty if they got a starter of his caliber where he looks like a 2 or 3 starter for a 4-year, $11 million a year contract, I mean, that is a steal. And that allows them to have, frankly, now it's easier to move a guy. If he continues to establish himself, it's easier to move some of these young pitchers to try and make trades for big time players where they need them out in the field. So it's exciting. It's super fun to watch. Hopefully I did not just jinx him and he's not going to just blow up against Arizona tomorrow. But we'll kind of see. As always, go Giants. Let me know what you guys think. Smash the subscribe button, like video, and we'll talk more later this week, probably this weekend after the, reacting kind of the Diamondback series. So hope you guys all have a good Friday and have a great weekend. Bye.